And we're back. Welcome back to the highway. It's dark out. It's evening. It's the same day. Today, Tuesday, just after Thanksgiving. In October 2019, I'm sitting out on the balcony. Cars are driving by. Fairly peaceful. Not too much happening out there. It's getting colder. We're at about 15 Celsius. It's about 60 Fahrenheit. I am wearing extra layers right now just to try and keep warm. I do like the atmosphere out here, though. It sometimes it's nice to listen to or even to watch lights go by. So I'm going to proceed here with this project. This is the October 2019 media expression project. I'm in the first phase, currently recording. This is hour 15. At about 85,000 words estimated. That's about 330 pages on a book. I think I just went over this. Anyways, I've been thinking about how neat it is, the idea that I've basically written a book in less than a week, simply by dictating it. So I suppose this is a testament to the effectiveness of the dictation protocol, or the dictate protocol. So it's been very good flow. I'm going to try and hop back in where I was, just catching up with some thoughts I've been having about small groups, about church, about how church operates. Just coming back to that first kind of topic that I wanted to drop in here for the last couple or last few hours of discussion. So yeah, church, things coming to mind. It's interesting how the church is kind of like, in some ways, the church can be more challenging and better in ways compared to the world, so to speak. As I was discussing today with a coworker, this just came up, and I mentioned that we ended up talking about church, what I was doing over the weekend. So I played Sunday morning worship guitar, which I have been for almost a year now, and it's really, I enjoy it. It's like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off normally, or something like that. A month here or there without being asked to play or whatever. But it's great experience, very enjoyable for me, and just standing up in front of a whole bunch of people, 100 plus, whatever. It's been an uncomfortable unknown to step into, and I'm happy that I'm comfortable with it now. It just it feels really great to I guess to worship God. That's number one. That feels really great. But to play in front of others as well, and to kind of to make it a service, it's more wholesome. You got the loop. The loop is kind of going there. But anyways, as I was saying with my coworker, the church can often be more difficult because at least the world will tell you. I mean, there's always standard deceptions, but if you're talking anything about the Spirit, at least they'll tell you point blank their ideas, and maybe will more often be open to conflict and hopefully subsequent reconciliation. In other words, growth in relationship. and of course this happens everywhere. I'm just saying, like, the church is like the world basically, except you have a higher concentration of obviously, of course, participants, and by fact of proximity of say this sharing space time, we have guests as well, guests of the kingdom of God. So I can speak church terminology in alignment with the model terminology as well. I've found it's pretty easy to translate and talk about, because, as I mentioned before, Christianity is a very, very robust and in many ways unique religion among religions. And again, this is its facility in pointing towards the meta religion, which no religion can be, which no symbol set can be due to the problems discussed earlier. But they can represent, the symbols can claim to represent the meta-narrative. This is like the highest claim of a religion. A claim to represent God, again, and it's said no one has ever seen God, this kind of stuff. That's kind of the point there. That's just yet another isomorphism with between scripture and the model. And by the way, I might as well say, which I brought up kind of the idea, or at least introduced before, like a lot of what we're using as far as our symbol set are what we call sometimes a Frankenstein symbol set, just taken from everywhere and put together based on our experience. But a lot of that has come from out of Buddhism, and due to the Buddhist history, I guess, of phenomenology, a focus on phenomenology. So this is kind of like, you can't, I mean, and again, most religions will have some isomorphisms, and it's really the way that you end up using it. Like, at some point, it's like, find where the loop is broken, like find the break. That's like how to kind of see how mass institutions have been exploited, is you find the break in the loop. You could call that a protocol to knowing how to address how a particular religion or symbol set, or even on an individual basis, how people may be misinterpreting things. So anyways, the point bringing up Buddhism is because some Christians will be offended to know that to know that a Buddhist symbol set is capable of pointing to some of the same things that a Christian symbol set can point to, as far as being interpreted by the symbol, symbolically by an individual. So the kind of point here is that with membership, or in other words, when the Spirit comes to you, or when you're born again, or when you're born into the Pure Lands, these are just two different, so Christian and Buddhist symbols there specifically for that rebirth, spiritual rebirth event, or realization, or transformation. It's just a natural progression, really, to do with your relationship, with your identity of who you are, and your relationship with yourself and with God. So anyways, when I talk extensively and just have talking in so many ideas, like it's bound to trigger people, and unfortunately, people who are thinking in a more dogmatic frame of mind. This is so related to potentially exploits of the cognitive discrepancy. That's how they'll typically work. Of course, you can have good you can have good instruction, you can have proper instruction. As I believe I mentioned earlier, the participation degree of coherence is a matter of confidence at some point, because so your awareness is built as a guest, and the point of participation is to have confidence in trying to copy that behavior. In other words, you are initializing the bootstrap. You are strapping the boots on when you become a participant, because you are now actively trying to engage in behaviors which have been captured as expressions, as in symbol sets, as in even so much as commandments, like do not kill, love your neighbor, love your God. So the participation stage is bootstrapping, and it's dependent on the skill which we have associated mostly so far with it is accountability, because you know that you're committed, your awareness is built, you're past that point, and it's just a matter of actually being able to follow through with your commitments, which we consider that a skill in itself, called accountability. Notice, I can just bring this up quickly, the definition or the typical usage of the word accountability is kind of as a crutch. This would be relating to at least an aspect of crutch protocol. This is a more basic way of doing a crutch. So really, so this is loading up more context for the coherence protocol, which is relevant in relationships and interactions with other people, because you're going to be actively paying attention to, well, I mean, the coherence of everything around you, but specifically if we're talking guest, participant, member, master, grandmaster. These are things that can be, as I mentioned before, if you are at a certain level of coherence, you can recognize when constraints at that level have been breached. So in other words, you know how to disqualify yourself, but you kind of can stop doing that now, as far as how your expressions turn out in the environment, the kind of signals you're sending out, your behaviors, etc. This is kind of the self-selection, and it's really you yourself that's able to affirm if you really do kind of see that higher or finer. So you start to see how a thing works, how something works. You're able to stop messing it up. You don't need the instructions as much. So that this journey through increase of coherence, this is just this is a necessary part of the guild. So this is important when we're relating to other people, to kind of be able to gauge where they're at and know how to interact with them best or most efficiently, kind of by seeing where they're at, and then having the ability to avoid certain triggers or adjust your behavior to accommodate so, and on the other hand, there's this trust in a relationship that sort of has to build up before one accepts what's being presented to them. Like, I suppose enough people suggesting to do something, such as take care of the areas of concern. If enough people are suggesting it, it seems trustworthy. So this is getting into kind of web of trust type details, and all this kind of information, of course, would be put together in real time using software for the dashboard. And again, the dashboard is just an external representation of internal processes, which we've decided to intentionally externalize. So in other words, we're keeping track of organs. This is an external software for keeping track of those organs, keeping track of all the things that we externalize, as well as our relationships and how we get what we need, etc. Test. Yeah, okay. Volumes are good. Levels are good. We're at about 15 minutes there. I haven't really gotten too much into the small group research per se. I've more been just talking about the church, but I guess so. This is just yet more interesting context, and I have to deal with things that I have to deal with. That, like, I'm just trying to speak up and be honest, but these things can be so difficult to say without being judged and immediately categorized and falling victim and prey to the crust of death, of spiritual death. This is getting back to the APS and how we need flow there. We need that childlike wonder to stop seeing things as a crusty old way, especially when in dealing with traumas, whether acknowledged or not, or remembered or not. What's shaped our unique path into the universe of what our web of meaning looks like when we interpret things. It's unique to each of us, but there are convergences. This is a known, of course, phenomenon, and one expected of culture, and that already happens in culture, with internalized memories and processes, strictly. So, like, for example, oral traditions and whatnot. But we've certainly been able to kind of program our realities for a long, long time. The problem was exacerbated or really spilled out onto its own. This is referencing the breakaway civilization, also known as the Great Schism, or the Great Axial War, which we are in currently. At least this is one narrative which I particularly enjoy. I guess I think never mind. But so the war there was for control of meaning, whether it be externalized and applied against us, or whether we have an internal counterpart which is alive and dynamic, and meeting that external meaning in a more of a dance than a complete submission, and not even knowing what it is, a complete unawareness of what reality is. And so trapped in it. So this is why we offered protocols such as the linchpin protocol, just to allow you to break out of that your patterns, especially what we need to get at here is that pure potentiality, and this is where things unfold fractally, etc. When you try and look at an object and think of what it is, what that type of thing is, abstractly in and of itself. So we focus on the breath normally. This would be just classic standard linchpin program, if you will. So watch your breath, figure out what it is in and of itself, what is breath, and just watch that fractal unfold. Unless you have some linear explanation, then that means you're doing it wrong, and you're not grounding your results in your own experience. So what is breath? What is breathing? If you're going to try and give a straightforward definition, basically. So this is the key of the linchpin protocol, is to be actually doing that. So I could only give a few examples quickly without getting bored, I guess. But the sensation of breathing in and out, the controlling and timing of breath, the noticing of breath, now you're breathing manually and you're not breathing automatically anymore. These experiences we have of running out of breath. Why do I breathe? I just keep breathing. It goes on without me thinking about it. And if I exert myself, I may need more breath, and I will ask my body for more oxygen, and it will give by a breath through the lung. So I would also go into experiences of models, classroom models of cellular biology and or organ, human anatomy. Just this kind of visualizations. And where did these visualizations come from? They're pictures and analogs cascading back through time. Anyway, so this is how long I talked about what breath is. So that's an example of how to do the linchpin protocol and how to break into pure potentiality to realize what we call emptiness, commonly referred to. The emptiness, and okay, I forget where I'm going with that, but I'll just continue on with the linchpin protocol. We have to make sure that we are doing that relationship, that flow, that negotiation between abstract and concrete. And by utilizing the example that I just gave, we can kind of tell the difference and make sure of whether we are in our mind or in our body. And we need a dynamic relationship between both. And this is what we're seeing with the linchpin protocol, which is a meditation. You can really focus on anything you want and see what is that type of object in and of itself. What is it? What is it? Take it apart, deconstruct it, and then watch the unfolding. So just before this I was mentioning the Fatum project, which has a similar goal, and with the Fatum project, it's a pretty easy seeming and intuitive way of just changing your reality. And I think that there are a number of protocols that would assist with doing that, with what I call ice breaking. So icebreaker protocol, that's one of them. This linchpin protocol, definitely. So while you're out on adventure, just kind of do this with stuff, and try to just go further and further into like some kind of like lucid trip, like a trip, just allow the mania of potential to just pop and bust out of everything. That's one way you could go. Yeah, so this would definitely augment Fatum trips for sure. So back to the church. I don't remember how I got off on that tangent, but I'm glad that I seem to continue to get into new little facets and just keep recording. We're at about surprisingly only 26 minutes or so into this one. Seems like longer, but I guess we've only just started getting into the topic of the church. As well as discussing the meta religion, which is very difficult to. Basically, you're running this kind of like self-censorship protocol in some ways. Maybe call it the no trigger protocol. So the no trigger protocol is you don't want to trigger those of coherence which is less than yours as their highest achievement. So to speak, and you don't want to say anything that discourages or ruins faith in, or makes something feel or seem lame. And this is kind of where, I mean, in a lot of cases, the sort of concrete, the myth, the story, the narrative is all you need, and just stay true to it. And make connections where you can with others in discussion, in communication. So the churches can be difficult, just as the world. I'm just kind of creating a dichotomy there. But we have our we have a phenomenon of spirituality, but not religious, and again, so I got to come back and say, like, there is like, we can't take a dogmatic approach against other expressions, against other symbol sets. It doesn't help. But we can find isomorphisms, and in fact we can help to repair these systems, these religions. We can help to repair them. And just use them skillfully to increase coherence of those around us. So I don't know if I'll get into it right now, but so I was gonna kind of get into my experience about the church, and which is kind of you'll see everywhere. I've kind of had a lot of different, a lot of great relationships through the church so far, and a lot of kind of like I guess. Like, I have a book going into this one. They call it Cultural Christianity, I believe, which is this danger of participation. One of the dangers or pitfalls of participation is I guess stagnation. I think you could call it that. Just a getting comfort in a system and then crusting up and never changing. That's how you know that what you've done has only gone to at most participation. With membership, again, there's this whole new world, so to speak, the kingdom of heaven, a new source through the context of your body mind connection, your context out into the world, your context through the body, your organs both internalized and externalized. So this is membership, and that's why it's important to work on your accountability and continue to have to try and bolster your own faith. And as well, this is when we need others around us the most. This is where we need support the most, I think, because once membership is achieved, it's kind of like you can't really go back to seeing things the way they were. It's kind of like insights unlocked. Which is the same for any area of behavior, any skill development. But in this case, we're talking about the most kind of meta and the most spiritual, the skill of skillfulness itself. which demands a conscious embodiment and awareness. So, I don't know, I kind of hope that I can just blast through this a bit, but I had some more things about the church that I wanted to talk about. One was addiction and its relation to trauma, as well as its you could say, I guess, positive feedback cycles. I mean that in a negative way, with the state, so to speak, with the spectacle. Kind of when we encounter the machine, when we encounter that sympathetic response from others, when we are being judged by law, in other words. So this is a kind of terminology within the Christian symbol set. So when we're judged by law, we are alienated, and it betrays the perception of the one applying that judgment. Because it says that's how they are relating to you. They are seeing that you did not meet a condition. So I'm getting into the kind of dynamics of being open and talking about an addiction or usage of drugs or any other number of kind of sins, I guess, as they call it. And this is why people are afraid, I found, in the church to open up about problems and about sin. For one, I, even after my research, wouldn't recommend sharing at this level with participants. But again, that's where the problem is going to happen, because that's how the problems always come up, or it seems. Mostly, there are exceptions, but and definitely this process, this journey towards increasing of coherence. At this point, we call it the journey of sanctification in Christian terms. That's a process, and so it's something that nobody's perfect. But so what we're finding is, like, as much as you may want to be open and discuss things, there are these cliques, these families, there are tribes, there are, in other words, worldly groups, and worldly families as potentially a focus, instead of what you could say your church family or your church, your family in Christ. So I believe every church will have this kind of problem. This is something you'll expect everywhere, because if I had to guess, I would say most people are going to land in participation or participant degree of coherence. But again, the point of being aware and having a discipleship program which acknowledges the importance of of membership, of true membership in the church. In other words, spiritual rebirth, being born again. Unless you're born again, you'll not enter the kingdom of heaven unless you're like a child. And this is, I've brought up enough information here to give context for what it could mean, like a child. And so again, we're coming back to that sense of wonder behind everything, that reality is very pliable, very putty like, but we grow crusty and dead, in fact. So this is the crust of spiritual death. And the only reason it can happen is because our organs have been so severely externalized that responsibilities from so many areas of our existence have simply been become redundant.
I need your help to make the bed.
Okay, I'll be right in.